A Matter of Honor takes us back to Season 2, and the timing of it is notable for our purposes. We knew there was a peace between the Federation and the Klingons. We knew that the Klingon culture was something that Worf did not experience directly. So what we have had of them by now was solely the Season 1 episode Heart of Glory, as far as direct involvement with Klingons goes. Worf has studied his people, but we see that there is a divide between the Klingon ideal that he has aspired to be and the reality of what his people are like. So what makes this episode so important is the need to give Klingons culture, and to see it from the inside. Hence the reason for the wall of text here, normally a bad sign. We'll see how it goes. The episode picks up with a pickup. 4 people have beamed over, but one of them is not in Starfleet. Much to Wesley's surprise, who thinks that it's his friend Mordock who applied at the Academy. Turns out it's not him, but another of his species, Mendon, although played by the same actor, so you can excuse the confusion.
Hey, it's a friend of mine. You look just like him.
We are from the same geostructure. Naturally, we look alike.
How do you tell each other apart?
Because we're not racists. While Wesley leads him to orientation, Picard calls Riker to meet him in the phaser range, so they can talk while doing some sharpshooting. During which, Picard oh so casually leads Riker from point to point that's essentially, you should really spend some time serving on a Klingon ship. The same reason Mendon is here, the officer exchange program. Not to be confused with the student exchange program, wherein a French student stays at your house for a few weeks, complaining that they're not allowed to smoke at the dinner table. After the titles, Riker asks Worf to clear up some confusing things, like, say, the fact that he might need to kill the captain. That's a case where it might be good to have some details. That's not one for on-the-job training. Basically, it's kind of like the Terran Empire, where the subordinate keeps an eye on the person above them. But it's to see if the person is no longer capable. It's not done for reasons of ambition. We don't want to be constantly watching out for a knife in our backs. We just need to know that the threat of murder is there to help us prevent some backsliding. Let the crew know the ship is in good hands, I say. On the bridge, Mendon is wandering away from his station to observe what others are doing, like noting things could be a bit more efficient.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. Just thought I could be of some help. However, I am correct in what I said.
Well, at least we can rest easy knowing there's an objective viewpoint on your assertion.
Of course, a minor change of the helm readout would be much more helpful in emergency situations.
We've never had any problems with it. Have you seen it work?
Not in a practical exercise, but in theory, my theory, it would be more than a marginal improvement.
It takes amazing effort to be insufferable while standing next to Wesley Crusher. This is like watching a shark get eaten by a giant spider. Speaking of unpleasant sights of eating, Will Riker. He's hit a buffet of Klingon foods right now in anticipation of his trip there, observed by a grimacing Picard and Pulaski. Now Pulaski, of course, is as open to new ideas as your average witch trial juror, and even Picard, fascinated with the idea of learning about Klingons, can't bring himself to sample any of the stuff that Riker is wolfing down. Frakes really earned his paycheck this week. Worf gives Riker an emergency transponder, should the worst happen, and just in time for a bird of prey to show up. Mendon notes to Worf the captain's not too friendly, but Worf is less than interested in the catfish's point of view. So Mendon starts examining a weird reading he's getting off of the Klingon ship, and begins investigating, though he does take time to interrupt Picard on his way to the turbolift.
I am Ensign Mendon. I just wanted to tell you how pleased I am to be aboard the Enterprise.
Yes, of course. Good to have you aboard.
He's the diplomatic captain. Speaking of diplomatic missions, Riker is getting used to being stared at by the curious Klingons, but the real problem starts when he reaches the bridge.
Exactly where are your loyalties, Commander?
Are you Team Jacob or Team Edgar? The captain wants to be sure Riker's loyalty is to him and this ship, and Riker asserts that he is, but the second officer, Clank, objects, probably to the fact that he's named Clank. He says he doesn't believe Riker, so after ensuring the captain is leaving this in his hands, Riker beats the crap out of him.
My
It's between Captain Kargan and myself. Your only concern is with how you obey my orders.
Now take a lap. Meanwhile, the Enterprise has discovered a problem with their own ship, some kind of rust-looking thing on the back of the engineering section. That'd be bad if a baby alien ever tried suckling there. This episode has particularly meaningless technobabble.
Substance appears to be a rare form of subatomic bacteria capable of doubling itself in size every 15 minutes.
Welcome to Star Trek, where single-celled organisms can vary in size between bigger than a planet and smaller than an atom. Don't worry, though, it gets worse. The technobabble, I mean, but also the situation, for that matter, as Mendon says that he spotted this on the Klingon ship, and he didn't tell anyone because he hadn't finished analyzing it yet. The approach of the Benzites is to first come up with a full examination and a solution, and then report something weird has happened. No sense bothering people with something they can do nothing about, after all. You'll just depress them. On the BOP, Riker is putting that practice with Klingon foods to good use, but there's one place where his research fell a bit short. He didn't know that the gach is served alive.
Would you like something easier?
Easier.
Yes. If Klingon food is too strong for you, perhaps we could get one of the females to breastfeed you.
Perhaps if you play your cards right, Riker. Actually, one does broach the topic of sleeping with Riker just to test his mettle, but Riker's suggestion that he's prepared to handle both of them at the same time brings down the house. Little do they know, most of the time he's not joking. I figure the only difference between this and his academy days for Riker really is the lighting isn't very good and nobody is saying, chug, 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 chug. Clank and another Klingon come over after the others depart, where clearly Riker's earned some respect for himself and the Federation. Early Riker especially is often a douchebag, but this one we see takes his role as a representative of Starfleet seriously and will suffer through whatever it might take in order to learn from them and, in turn, show them that he isn't going to arrogantly presume that his ways are superior. Sound like someone we know on the Enterprise right now? You see, the reason that Mendon is there, so that we can see what Riker is trying to avoid doing. The fact that Worf is Mendon's superior makes this even more clear. Both need to impress a Klingon, and one is failing miserably at the job. So yes, Riker will respect their ways, but he won't remain silent on his views. Clank says his father was captured by Romulans, eventually came back home, and now lives in disgrace, waiting to die of old age. At the comment that Klingons don't have the same views on the matter of disgraced family, Riker says maybe they should, but then eats a forkful of gach to demonstrate that you can learn new ways of doing things, except properly pronouncing that word. Sorry, Klingon is actually beyond my vocabulary. Meanwhile, the Enterprise has discovered the cause of the itty-bitty teeny-tiny space germs and is working on a cure. But they know the Klingons are going to need to know about this. It's going to work even faster on their ship than on the Enterprise. Only, yeah, the Klingons have already found it, on account of there's a big hole in the side of their hull, and even they managed to notice something like that. The captain has Riker called in, shows that they're facing imminent death, and notes the only ship they've come in contact with was the Enterprise. Ergo, it's their fault. That scan by Mendon, or rather, by Mendon, was recorded and now used as proof that the Enterprise must have done this to them. Riker naturally asks why the Enterprise would do that with Riker on board. They'd be killing Riker. And Captain Picard wouldn't suggest Riker take this job and then test a new weapon on the same ship to make it look like the ship just broke up on its own and Riker's murder would be the perfect crime. Son of a bitch, give me a star chart. I'm going to help you find that hairless bastard. Meanwhile, Mendon is skulking because he failed to demonstrate his superior abilities to Picard, but Wesley tries to downplay it. All he did was stumble on the protocols, that's all. It's just that they have a protocol fetish around here.
I realize you are trying to be nice to me, and I appreciate it. What I don't understand is why.
Haven't I made clear I'm a dick? Back on the BOP, Riker gets sent to engineering to learn how the space bug is doing, allowing the captain to talk to Clank. He doesn't trust Riker, But Clank has been won over. He doesn't see any sign that Riker knew of this, and it's true that doing this with him on board makes no sense. But the presence of the Enterprise looking for them is proof enough for the captain, convinced they're here to observe the effect of the weapon.
Do not forget my rank.
I haven't.
How can I? Your BO is filling the bridge. It might be the hull is getting eaten away by your funk. He demands to know of the Enterprise's weaknesses, but Riker refuses. He'll serve this ship and go down with it, but he won't break his oath to Starfleet.
If you had told those secrets about the Enterprise, I would have labeled you a traitor and killed you where you stood. But instead, you will die with us. You will die like a Klingon.
Just what I always wanted. Well, good news. Mendon has found out how to deal with the space bug. I'm not even going to get into the details of that technobabble. The Enterprise's message now includes that they know how to deal with the space bugs and make repairs. But the captain doesn't believe them. From what we've seen, a Klingon would rather err on the side of dying in a pointless battle than take even the slightest chance of dying while helpless. The Enterprise raising shields in response to the suspicious situation is the captain's cue to fire, no matter what Riker says. So Riker makes clear he thinks the captain's judgment is in question, then pulls out the transponder, making no effort to disguise that he's doing it. The captain insists on looking at it, and sure enough, they beam over the captain while he's holding on to the transponder. Riker then assumes command, having relieved the captain of duty. He decloaks, all weapons locked on the Enterprise, and then hails them, demanding that they lower shields and surrender. Picard naturally does. As we saw, early Picard surrendered to just about anyone willing to listen. So, with the problem resolved, the captain gets sent back, Riker lets him take back control, and hopefully we've all learned a valuable lesson. Never volunteer for anything ever. Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to Mendon. He's like if Q gave up his powers and worked for the DMV for 10 years. Final score for A Matter of Honor is, and I know this is probably going to be controversial, 5 out of 10. It's important in many ways, but I have to admit it doesn't really grip me the way it does others. It's not a bad episode, but it's dark, claustrophobic, and has a living with the enemy feel even though they're allies. I know, it's all intended. But I'm sorry to say this episode just doesn't grip me the way that it does for others. I'm sure this puts me in the minority, but, well, there it is. It's important. I don't want to downplay it or anything. It helps provide a foundation that's, well, miles beyond the screw-up that we had with the last outpost and the introduction of the Ferengi. And for lots of people, this episode is great. For me, it's just typical TNG, so take that for what it's worth.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Riker has no honor. He tricked me!